All right, canning utensils. All right, so we have a variety of canning utensils here. We're going to start off talking about the tongs. Okay, so now these are just basic tongs. We all know what tongs are. I typically use my tongs to maneuver my jars when they sometimes fall over inside of the water bath canner. That way I don't have to put my hand into the water. I don't have to risk getting burned. I'll just reach in like this and just set it up right. So those are the tongs. All right, and then we have what are known as the band removers. All right, so this is also a band remover. They're just two different styles. And so they help to remove the band that is on your jar. The next day when you're testing your jars, you're going to take your band off, and sometimes they're a little hard to remove. And so you just use it like so. It will give it a nice grip and allow it to twist off easily, like so. Sometimes food will seep out onto the mouth of the jars through processing, and it gets a little sticky to remove. And so that's when this is sometimes needed. This is just a different style. I like this one because it has a nice thick grip to it. And it also works to place your bands on. Yep, so it can go either way. You don't leave your bands on after they've processed and sat overnight. You want to make sure you remove your bands for storage. Unless you have something like a dried item that you're just kind of storing in your pantry. For example, I have some dried oregano here that I keep my bands on for. I've got some dried basil. And so of course you're going to need a band for that. And you want it to be pretty tight because you don't want, you want to keep them fresh. And so sometimes I will use, my band tightener or band remover to just tighten the bands on. Okay, so these are called magnetic lid lifters. And if you look, you see they have little magnets on the tips. All right, and so they just are used to help maneuver your lids and bands and placing them onto your jar, like so. See that? Just grabs it with the magnet, and you can just use your finger to just kind of keep it still. That way you don't have to grab it like this and have your hands and fingers touching it, placing bacteria on your lid. You don't want that. So this way you can just grab it and boom on the outside of the lid. That way you're not touching anything. Same thing with the band. Just grab it like so and just twist it on. This is also a magnetic lid lifter. Like I said, it's just a different style. It's a little bit longer. You can use it, if it's in the bottom of your canner. You see this one is longer, and that way you can get your lids out of the canner or have them in a bowl like this. Either way, this comes in handy when maneuvering your lids and bands. Now we have the debubbler headspace ruler. This end is for debubbling. This end is for measuring headspace. So after the food is placed in the jar, you're going to use your debubbler end of this tool and place it into the jar in between the food and the interior of the jar. And you're going to bounce around a couple times like this. And it just helps to remove any air pockets that could be hiding in your food. Very important. Okay, so just bounce around a couple times like that. Like you have some apples in there, you're just going to pop around a few times, and it just helps remove air pockets. Then this end, you're going to flip it around to measure the headspace. So we have some notches on here that measure 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 up to 1 inch. And this tip here is where the food should not come above. Okay, so let me just kind of hold the glass up here. So from the top of the mouth of the jar, here like this. This space in between here is called the head space. So it would be the open space that the food is not present. All right, so say you fill your food up to here. This open space would be referred to as the head space. All right, and so this is a 1-inch notch. And if I were to place it on the mouth of the jar, that would mean I'm measuring 1-inch head space. And so every recipe calls for a different head space, and your recipe book will let you know what the head space is, meaning how far to fill your jar up with food. Okay? All right, so here I would do a 1/2 inch if that's what the recipe called for. You know, see if I can get this camera to come in a little bit closer to show you the 1/4 inch. So that's the 1/4 inch or 1/4 inch, and you just place the notch right there in the mouth, and your food, whatever the food is inside, would not come up above the tip of the headspace ruler, nor would it go below, like if it was applesauce or salsa. All right, so now let's take a look at our funnel. Now we know what a funnel is, but what is the purpose of it? So we'll pop it into our jar like this, and basically, you know, like say it was some type of soup, you're gonna, you know, scoop your soup in there with your ladle, and it just helps to cut down on splash that could leak out onto your, or spill out onto the outside of your jar. So the funnel just helps with control. Okay. We don't want anything leaking out. Now, when I do my green beans or things that are elongated, like carrots sometimes or asparagus, I'll just use my hands and just kind of put them in there, because using a funnel like this and a ladle really doesn't make sense in that instance. All right, so now we have the jar lifter, the famous jar lifter, and it is just what it says it is, a jar lifter. Okay. So you're going to just grip it like so, in and out of your canner. Okay. And so that these get really hot when it's time to remove them from your canner. They can get up to about 260 degrees Fahrenheit. So you need a jar lifter so that you can just grip it and pull it out of your canner. You do not want to be touching it with your hand, not even a pot holder, because those jars are super hot. This is another style of a jar lifter. See, it has a little rolly ends on it, and it's just, I like it because it's smooth on your hand. This one doesn't have that, but they both get the job done. As you can see, the bottom end with the rubber around it is what you're going to use for lifting your jars in and out of the canner. All right, so let's look at these tools one more time. We have tongs. Excuse me. We have tongs. We have our band remover. Also can be used for placing the bands on. This is another style of the band remover. Then we have our magnetic lid lifters that have a little magnet at the end of it, and it just helps to place the lids onto the jars without having to handle them so much. See that there? Let's twist it right on. You don't have to touch it as much. This is another style. It's just longer. Then we have the headspace and debubbler tool. This is the debubbling end, and this is the headspace ruler end with the notches. We have the funnel, helps to control splash, and the jar lifter to lift our jars in and out of the canner. And these are all of the tools necessary for canning.